Well, honey, grab your sweet tea and settle in because it's time we talk about poor old Lindsey Graham. Yes, that Lindsey. The man who's been everything to everyone and yet somehow nothing to anyone. You know, it's one thing to lose your way, but Lindsey didn't just take a wrong turn. No ma'am, no sir. He packed a full bag, bought a map in reverse, and made a career of wandering the desert of political identity with no compass, no cause, and certainly no convictions. Let's not kid ourselves. Lindsey Graham hasn't changed. He's always been this way. Before his current act as Trump's most loyal lapdog, tail wagging and all, he was sniffing around the likes of Senators Strom Thurmond and Trent Lott like a puppy who'd missed breakfast. You remember that, don't you, Lindsey? There he was at Ed Young's plantation, hovering in the shadows, clinging to their coattails like static cling, just hoping anyone might notice him. Senators Strom Thurmond and Bob Dole were treated like royalty, and there was Lindsey, arms folded, smile frozen, waiting his turn that never came. Truth be told, those of us who witnessed Lindsey's state of affairs pitied him back then. He wasn't taken seriously, not by the big dogs in the room, and certainly not by the folks who were watching him chase relevance like a child chasing fireflies. But bless his heart, when Strom Thurmond died in 2003, that was the break Lindsey had been waiting for. Not to rise, mind you, but to contort. Because if there's one thing Lindsey Graham has mastered, it's the art of being whatever he thinks the room he's in at the time wants him to be. And Lord have mercy, hasn't that room changed? First he called Donald Trump unfit for office, and next thing you knew, he was flying around on Air Force One like a man who forgot what he said 5 minutes ago. 1 minute he's warning us all about Trump's moral failures. The next, he's hugging him tighter than a Sears suit in July. Lindsey didn't just do a 180. He spun like a weather vane in a tornado, slapping whichever way the MAGA winds blew. But don't let the polished shoes and senator title fool you. Lindsey Graham may sound like a man with authority, but he is still the same mealy-mouthed, thirsty, sorry excuse for a public servant that he was back when he was clinging to Strom Thurmond's shadow. He hasn't grown, he hasn't learned, and most importantly, he hasn't stood for a single thing that mattered. Not for South Carolina, and certainly not for the country. Contrast that with Strom Thurmond. A deeply flawed man, no question, but even he found room to evolve. He changed, even if slowly, even if incompletely. He began to see people as individuals. That's what statesmanship looks like. Lindsey? He's still chasing the next power figure to attach himself to, without a principle to call his own. If Strom Thurmond learned, Lindsey unlearned. And unlearned. And unlearned. Now, with Trump world reconfiguring and Project 2025 coming out of the shadows, who's sliding into the spotlight next? Paul Dans, the very man behind that dystopian fever dream of right-wing restructuring, is tossing his hat in the ring. Yes, the man who drafted plans to gut the civil service, hire a loyalty army, and turn the government into a MAGA machine, now wants to oust Lindsey Graham from his Senate seat. And he's not alone. Former Lieutenant Governor Andre Bauer is lining up too. Now don't get me wrong. These fellas may be extreme, brash, and maybe even roaring racists, but at least you know what you're getting. They don't pretend to be something they're not. Poor old Lindsey, meanwhile, is sitting in no man's land. MAGA doesn't trust him, Moderates don't believe him, and the rest of us? Well, we just remember him. We remember the Lindsey who lingered in the background at Ed Young's plantation, the Lindsey who begged for attention, begged for validation, and most tragically, begged to be relevant. So when history writes its chapter on Senator Lindsey Graham, what will it say? Not that he stood firm, not that he led, not that he evolved, but that he followed, blindly, desperately, anyone who would let him tag along. Lindsey Graham will not be remembered for what he did, but for what he failed to do. Protect his people, tell the truth, and find out who he was. Because at the end of the day, Lindsey Graham isn't a man who lost himself recently. He's a man who never knew himself at all. And baby, that's the real tea. This is Sensible Sue signing off.